Uh-oh.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. Moving over to the Featherweight division, where WBO champion Rafael Espinoza beat amateur standout and Olympian Ramirez for the second time in what was a somewhat different fight, different circumstances. This was not the knockdown, drag-out, all-out brawl that the first one was. Ramirez took a very different approach, trying to stay on the outside of the taller, longer fighter.
I thought that was weird.
For the shorter, stumpier fighter to take that approach, because the way it usually works, the shorter guy's got to get mid-range to inside on the taller guy to stay out of harm's way, and staying on the outside, you're a sitting duck, because Rafael Espinoza doesn't need to be close to you to touch you with punches. He's got all that height, all that reach, but that's how Ramirez fought for 6 rounds.
Clearly wasn't looking for another fight like the first one. He wanted to take a more cautious, careful approach, circling away and trying to stay on the outside to catch Rafael with something hard.
And occasionally he did. A few clean counters here and there, an eye-catching left hook, but it was not enough to discourage Rafael Espinoza or keep him off of Robeisy.
Not a good game plan.
Rafael got in with a clean shot as Robeisy was leaning in, and Robeisy took himself out of it in the 6th round, waved himself off.
No mas.
He had had enough. Complaining about elbows in the exchange, being honest, I did see at least one instance where Rafael Espinoza's left elbow grazed Ramirez's eye, but it didn't seem like much in the moment, and it didn't seem intentional either. Just an occupational hazard.
There's gonna be cuts, bumps, and scrapes.
Certainly wasn't an elbow that did him in the 6th round. It was a clean shot that he was leaning into, thereby amplifying its damage. And on that premise, he removed himself from that situation. Some people are gonna say that he quit.
It looked that way to me. This fight didn't get the chance to play out how the first one did. It wasn't the shootout that the first one was.
I'd wager that based on how Ramirez fought and how the contest ended, he didn't want another shootout, but at the same time, he was powerless to do anything about it. Overwhelmed by Rafael Espinoza's aggression, size, and punching power, he was at his mercy, and he decided he had had enough. Now, whether or not you want to hold that against him, I'll leave such judgments up to you. He was promptly wheeled to the hospital.
I was told that he had lost mobility to one of his eyes backstage. Could be a fractured orbital, could be a detached retina.
Maybe he made the right decision. Being honest about Ramirez, in spite of his amateur pedigree, I was never blown away by this guy. I was never impressed by this fighter, and I have my reservations about these standout amateurs.
Well, they're probably fantastic amateurs. They're probably fantastic fighters for 3 rounds. But what about in 6, 8, 10, 12?
Are they still fantastic then? The amateurs and the paid ranks really are different beasts.
Robeisy was in there with one yesterday, and he just couldn't deal. For the second time, Rafael Espinoza beat him. But is Rafael going to stay at featherweight? It doesn't look like it. I saw some comments ahead of the fight
from Rafael himself stating that this may be his final fight in the men's featherweight division, and he may be moving up after this, thereby vacating the brown belt, the WBO title, and if he does, who does it go to?
Well, in the last set of updated rank standings, former champion Ramirez was ranked at number 1, but he took another loss yesterday. Ranked right behind him
is his top-ranked stablemate, Bruce Shushu Carrington of Brooklyn. Bruce is ranked at number 2. Arnold Kagai of the Ukraine. He's ranked at number 3. And thus it's conceivable that if Rafael decides to vacate the WBO title, it will be contested for by Bruce and Arnold. And I can go for that. Bruce is made for television.
One of Top Rank's next wave of fighters, the next cycle that will usher in the next era of Top Rank boxing.
Don't think you need to be Jack Blackburn or Burt Sugar to see a future champion in young Shushu Carrington. That's what's in the cards for him. What's in the cards for Rafael? The super featherweight division, I guess.
And what's that guy? 6 feet, 6'1"? So he'll fit right in. He's got plenty of room to fill out at 130 pounds. Get something going up there. He is a very exciting fighter.
It's just unfortunate that the featherweight division has stayed divided the entire time he's been a champion, because I had hoped to see him in a unification match, and thus that doesn't look to be happening now. So who's going to be the one to bring consolidation to this division? Who's going to be the guy that unifies all the alphabet titles? Is anybody even going to try to?
Congratulations to Rafael.
In the main event, we saw Oscar Valdez run it back with Manuel Navarrete, who ahead of this weekend's fight was coming off a loss and a drop down in weight from 135 back down to 130. And where initially I thought that would have an adverse effect on Emmanuel, it didn't. He was even more bruising, more devastating. Oscar Valdez looked like a man trying to hold back a hurricane.
The fight.
I don't think this one boils down to nuts and bolts boxing or styles, not necessarily. No, this one boils down to physicality. One fighter being, by and large, a better physical specimen than the other. That Oscar, even when he's getting in with hard punches, they're not having any effect on Emmanuel Navarrete. No effect upstairs, no effect downstairs. I saw Oscar land 3 or 4 right hands in succession. I saw him connect with sharp, crisp, counter left hooks that had no effect on Emmanuel, no response. So either he's got a great poker face or a fantastic chin. Neither would surprise me, because Oscar was unable to put a dent in El Vaquero. Put simply, it didn't boil down to tactics, to strategy, or styles. Vaquero's just too big and too strong for him, and there's nothing that Oscar can do about it. That may seem like a short-sighted quip.
It's not a knock on El Vaquero's boxing. It's not a knock on his brand of pressure fighting.
But having seen a good chunk of El Vaquero's career so far, going all the way back to his days as a super bantamweight, he was always very big for super bantam, for feather, for super feather.
Awkward and unconventional, which at those weights is a bit easier to get away with, but at 135, you noticed that stuff wasn't working on Dennis Berenchik. His power, when he did land, it didn't have the effect on the guy at 135 that it has on guys at 130.
Before he even moved up to 135, we saw that kink in the armor at 130 when he fought Australia's own Liam Wilson, a guy who, like Emmanuel Navarrete, is very big for the weight, very tall, very long, and he struggled with that guy a lot because he wasn't able to bear down on him as easily as he does a smaller fighter, like an Oscar Valdez.
Emmanuel Navarrete is very good with that awkward, unconventional style, throwing awkward, unconventional punches, and very strong too, durable. He is quite the physical specimen. Put simply, too much for Oscar Valdez, no matter what he tried.
Evaluating that fight, put simply, Emmanuel is just too much for him. And that doesn't boil down to styles or strategy. Physically, he was just too much. Now, he's talking about staying at super featherweight for 1 or 2 more fights. And hopefully those 1 or 2 more fights happen to be unification matches, because this division needs them.
That's what I would like to see from Emmanuel.
As it pertains to Oscar, and where should Oscar go from here, I'm sorry to say that he might need to start thinking about retiring. The way he got stopped in this fight, well, the way he got dropped 3 times and then stopped.
Oscar had already been in wars before yesterday's fight. This just adds to it. The damage, it all catches up sooner or later. Who is Oscar gonna win a belt from at this weight?
Or the next one. It's not a knock on Oscar, and there's no shame in it. He let it all hang out. He left it all out there, but I don't think he has much more to give.
He can't keep getting beat up like that.
You know, I thought he took a beating in the first fight. This was even worse. This time he got dropped 3 times, he got stopped off a liver shot. You don't recover from those as easily as you do the head punches.
I noticed that O'Shaquie Foster was in attendance. Two-time WBC Super Featherweight champion O'Shaquie Foster. He was there taking in the festivities.
There are 4 reigning champions in the Super Featherweight division. Emmanuel Navarrete, he's got the WBO, he's 1. O'Shaquie Foster, he's got the WBC, that's 2.
Lamont Roach, who is en route to a Gervonta Davis fight north of Super Feather at lightweight. He's got the WBA. That's 3.
And the United Kingdom's own Anthony Kakache, who's got the IBF title and is currently en route to a fight with his mandatory challenger, Sugar Munoz. That makes 4. I think the title is going to change hands in that fight, and I think Sugar will be the next IBF champion. But being honest, it's hard to imagine that any of these guys can stand up to Emmanuel Navarrete. He is the best in show, the most accomplished fighter,
the most accomplished champion at this weight. He is a 3-weight champion, where these guys have only been champions at this weight.
That it's the guy who moved up in weight that is the strongest and the most devastating, the hardest to hold back. Emmanuel Navarrete, I think he would knock out Lamont Roach. I think he would knock out Anthony Kakache.
And O'Shaquie Foster?
Very interesting fight, because O'Shaquie Foster has seen that base style before in less than favorable circumstances. He fought Rocky Hernandez south of the border for the vacant WBC title. And he really pulled it out, man. He really fought his ass off. Became WBC champion by beating the odds and beating Rocky Hernandez, a pressure guy.
Emmanuel Navarrete is a pressure guy.
Though Rocky Hernandez is no Emmanuel Navarrete. You may have been able to endure what Rocky brings to the table, but opposite the ring Emmanuel Navarrete, I am just not convinced O'Shaquie can beat him. I think Emmanuel would do to O'Shaquie what he's done to everybody else at this weight. He would overwhelm him, overpower him, outfight him.
Oddly enough, O'Shaquie Foster has the right style for the job. He's fluent within close quarters, he can counter, he can move, he can box, but this don't boil down to styles. Not with Emmanuel. Physically, I think he's just too strong.
Once he gets a barrage of punches going, all you can do is hang on for dear life, and I don't think anybody at 130 pounds can stand up to his power. No, he said last night he is entering into the second phase of his career. I think we're going to see at least one unification match from Emmanuel, and it might be the Foster fight.
They're both on the top rank side of things. Foster was scouting Emmanuel yesterday.
Would seem logical that Top Rank can make this fight happen in the coming year in-house with minimal friction. And if they do, I favor Emmanuel to win. If anybody's going to be unified champion at this weight, I think it's going to be Emmanuel.
I underestimated him before. I ain't going to make that mistake again.
And finally, in men's super lightweight news, former IBF super lightweight champion Subriel Matias of Puerto Rico reacted to Richardson Hitchens' big win yesterday over then champion Liam Barro, saying, "Congratulations, Richardson. Good performance. See you soon. Enjoy your victory." Accenting a brewing situation, a brewing problem for Richardson Hitchens. He's not out of the woods. It was reported that Eddie Hearn said they are in talks to continue working with the former IBF super lightweight champion Subriel Matias, and that he could feature on the Edgar Berlanga undercard on March 8th in Puerto Rico.
Why is that bad news for Richardson Hitchens? Well, Subriel Matias has since rebounded off his loss to Liam Barro, the fight where he lost his belt.
Had a rebound fight with a guy who goes by the name Roberto Ramirez on his native island of Puerto Rico, and he's back in the winner's bracket. To top it all off, he's ranked within the top 5 of the IBF's current ranked standings. In the latest set of ranks, Richardson Hitchens was ranked at number 1. That's set to change because he's champion now. Jack Catterall and Arnold Barbosia, they're ranked at number 3 and number 4, but we know that the both of those fighters may be going another route. They may be going the WBO route for the brown belt, and ranked right behind them is Subriel Matias, who very soon could be in position to challenge Richardson Hitchens for the red belt.
Those two guys go another route. Subriel Matias may leapfrog ahead of them, and maybe he takes on the number 6th ranked Gabriel Valenzuela of Mexico. That's the guy ranked right behind him.
They're talking about bringing him back on the undercard of Edgar Berlanga's next fight, which is presumed to go down on the island of Puerto Rico. Another big Puerto Rico show, and what we've been talking about, that there's a push to bring big-time boxing back to the island of Puerto Rico, and they can do that with Edgar Berlanga, with Subriel Matias. There's not a lot of emphasis on who Subriel is going to fight, but the fact that that Gabriel guy is ranked right there, a fight with him might land Subriel a mandatory position as the next mandatory challenger to the red belt, making him once again Richardson Hitchens' problem. The roles are reversed now. Before, Subriel was the champion and Richardson Hitchens was supposed to be the challenger. Now it's the other way around. But by now we all know Richardson Hitchens never kept the energy,
The enthusiasm for Subriel.
and a fight with Subriel that he keeps for a fight with someone else that he kept for a fight with Liam Buttle. When Subriel had the red belt, he was in no hurry to challenge him for it, talking about he wants to be 100%, and he doesn't know if he can do that with the IBF's 10-pound rehydration cap, that second-day weigh-in. Just a lot of excuses, because underneath it all, he didn't want to have to fight that guy for that belt. And as soon as it changed hands, that's as soon as he started piping up, saying this and that.
Well, guess what?
He's back. So you figure that Subriel might be just 1 or 2 fights away from challenging Richardson Hitchens for that alphabet title. He's got it in his head that he's going to land big fights and big unification matches like Teofimo Lopez fight, who he called out yesterday. That ain't going to happen.
The other champions and those other belts are on other sides of the street, and I don't think those fights are going to happen either, unfortunately for Richardson Hitchens, but this might. This is a situation that may soon come to a head.
Talk about base styles and what we saw yesterday. In his heart, Liam Buttle is a boxer-puncher. And while he might be able to apply pressure here and there in spots, it's not consistent. It's not like what you get from Subriel Matias. That's why Richardson Hitchens was able to work around him. Pure boxers like Richardson Hitchens have a technical edge over boxer-punchers, but not pressure fighters.
Boxing math is funny. Richardson Hitchens had the right style for Liam, and Liam had the right style for Subriel, but Subriel has the right style for Richardson.
It's a vicious cycle, and an occasional clean jab here and there I don't think will be enough to keep Subriel off of him. As pesky as that might have been for Liam Buttle, he's not as persistent and not as aggressive, not as come forward as Subriel Matias. That what worked against Subriel with Liam would work for him with Richardson Hitchens.
Boxing math is funny.
And the boxing gods themselves have a way of correcting these imbalances, because while there's no doubt that Richardson Hitchens definitely won yesterday's fight, there are some doubts as to how he got there and whether or not he should have been. A lot of people thought Gustavo Lemos beat him. He got away with that decision.
That resulted in a title shot he didn't deserve. And now he's got the title. He's champion, but he's not out of the woods.
If he really deserves to be champion, it may all boil down to whether or not he can deal with Subriel Matias, who he never wanted to fight anyway.
The boxing cosmos has a way of correcting these imbalances. Sooner or later, karma's coming at you.
Karma may arrive for Richardson Hitchens in the coming year, 2 fights from now, and we'll see how cocky he is then.
Because he sure has had a lot to say since Subriel lost. He was a lot more cordial before that.
See what happens.